Welcome back to College Football Addiction, a crazy, crazy day in the Big 12 for the second week in a row. BYU wins a thriller. Colorado takes care of business. Iowa State loses again, making their hopes for the Big 12 championship that much more dire. Let's get into all of it. BYU and Colorado now sit atop the Big 12 championship. I think if you could have gotten odds early in the year on BYU and Colorado specifically being your Big 12 championship contenders, or the two teams that will go to the Big 12 championship, which nothing is decided yet. If you watch these teams play and you watch the Big 12 this year, you know that that's not a foregone conclusion. I think if you could have gotten odds on those two teams specifically, they'd have been paying out pretty freaking good. BYU and Colorado control their own destiny, and then there is a host of two-loss teams behind that. Iowa State, Kansas State, Arizona State, West Virginia now back in things, kind of. They certainly have a path. They could get there. It's not going to be easy. They need a lot of help. But it is potential chaos coming in the Big 12. First off, on Colorado, broke down that game last night, so I will link it at the very end of the video. If you didn't see it already, I will link that one so you can watch it. And then obviously the BYU game. Crazy, crazy game where it took a last-second field goal, coaches and ADs yelling at officials, and a holding call that they didn't really like it there in Utah. I thought that BYU showed a lot of grit, being able to come back. They also showed that even though they're undefeated, they are certainly a beatable team. They've played with fire a couple of weeks now. Kind of reminds me of Miami playing with fire. This time it just didn't bite BYU right in the tail. The chaos isn't fully there. It's not fully realized, but if Colorado was to drop a game, you'd have a potential of 5 teams with 2 losses. Now, there's a ton of chaos possible. It's just not there yet. And I'm not predicting that Colorado loses a game. I'm not saying BYU drops a game or 2. None of that is a prediction just yet. But with how crazy the Big 12 has been this year, absolutely nothing would surprise me. Especially for Colorado, who you thought like Texas Tech is going to be their toughest game, and then they're just going to have smooth sailing. Well, then you look at what Kansas did yesterday, and then you look at a team like Utah taking BYU to the absolute final seconds, and you think, man, maybe those 2 games aren't as easy as once thought. I do think they'll beat Oklahoma State. I think they'll probably be favored in the other 2, but nothing's a sure thing at this point. That BYU game was nuts. Certainly showed that BYU's got some flaws. That was a rivalry game. Obviously, the Holy War. If you stayed up till 2 a.m. watching that thing with the rest of us, just absolute insanity. I'm sure you guys have seen Utah's AD coming out saying that he's going to talk with the commissioner because the game was stolen from them. Just insane finish. Let me know your thoughts if you stayed up late watching that, what you think about that holding call. It stunk because it didn't really have an impact on the play, but BYU fans, it was, if you hold somebody, you hold somebody, right? Whether it has an impact on the play or not, you gotta play within the rules. And so pretty brutal there, way to lose. For Utah, obviously means a lot when you're at home playing in a rivalry game, but BYU gets it done, and so credit to them for sure. There's a lot that's going to figure itself out over the next couple of weeks. Arizona State plays Kansas State. Both teams with 2 losses. That's an elimination game for someone. Arizona State, one of the better stories in the Big 12 this year, sitting there with just 2 losses in the conference. They have been really good. Shout out to Kenny Dillingham, doing a great job of changing the narrative around that program. And, they look like a player. They look like they're really fun. They found a way to beat UCF yesterday. A bunch of injuries for the Sun Devils, and they still found a way to get it done. But Arizona State and Kansas State going to have an elimination game there for someone. And then later on, Iowa State plays Kansas State, and that's an elimination game. If Kansas State can beat Arizona State, which they're favored to do this weekend, then Iowa State versus Kansas State will be an elimination game, and somebody will be out. But if you have if you have the perfect storm of Kansas State beats Arizona State, and then Iowa State beats Kansas State, then both those teams are out. Obviously, Colorado, for them, just about every game is an elimination game because of this, the tiebreakers. They're behind most teams in almost every tiebreaker scenario. Now, are there some tiebreakers that Colorado could win? Yes. They're pretty deep, though. And so Colorado doesn't really have the luxury, even though they're a game ahead, they don't have the luxury of playing like they're a game ahead. BYU does, right? BYU could lose a game and they'd be fine. Colorado cannot afford to lose, in my opinion. They have to go into every single week realizing, hey, if we lose this, we are no longer controlling our own destiny. You look at other conferences. You look at SMU, or you look at Miami. Miami could lose and Clemson could win, and Miami still has a tiebreaker over them. Not necessarily the way that it's going to go down in the Big 12. Miami lost yesterday. They're fine, right? They're still ahead of Clemson because of some tiebreakers over there. That won't be the case in Colorado's situation, I believe. So every game is an elimination game for Colorado, it would seem. West Virginia, can they sneak back in? They need a lot of help. They need a Colorado loss. They need Kansas State to lose. Obviously, West Virginia themselves would need to win out. So they're not eliminated. They're not done by any means, but West Virginia is going to need a lot of help. Now, all of this is irrelevant if Colorado can win out and BYU wins out, or even if BYU drops one game. But again, with the chaos we've seen in the Big 12 so far this year, I'm not necessarily betting that it's all over just yet. A quick cheering guide, a quick who to root for in this. Well, Iowa State plays Cincinnati. Everyone should be cheering for Cincinnati because then it eliminates Iowa State from contention. Utah versus Colorado. Everyone should be cheering for Utah in that game. It gives Colorado their second loss. They're behind on a lot of tiebreakers, like we just mentioned. BYU and Baylor and West Virginia. Everyone should be cheering for Baylor there. It eliminates the Mountaineers. I think everyone should cheer for Arizona State in this one. It would eliminate Kansas State, giving them their third loss. And I think Arizona State has a tougher schedule down the stretch. I think they're more likely to lose another game later. And so I would say you cheer for Arizona State in this if you're trying to play their percentages. Obviously, Colorado should cheer for Arizona State because they have the loss to Kansas State. You'd want to get them out of there. But I think Arizona State would be the team you'd cheer for, though. Either way, somebody is getting eliminated in that one. I do think that this is not chaos level 1,000 yet, like the SEC kind of is. But I do think the Big 12 is very close to being to that level. I do think what Colorado did was really impressive going into Texas Tech and getting that win yesterday. I think BYU coming back was really impressive as well. Both those teams really couldn't afford that loss. I mean, BYU could have afforded it a little bit more, but man, with everything going on, you just got to keep winning in the Big 12. Again, would anyone have predicted that Colorado and BYU would be your likely Big 12 championship matchup? Probably not. And to say that both those teams are guaranteed to win out and no chance they lose another game the rest of the way, that's probably not fair to say either. Now, could both those teams win out? Could both those teams win out combined? Absolutely. They're better than anyone else that's left on their schedule. They both should win each of their games, but you do really have to take it week by week. We got 3 games left for Colorado. They certainly could go out and win all 3 of those. BYU should be able to take care of business down the stretch as well. And I think that's your Big 12 championship matchup. Man, there's just too much insanity going on right now in the Big 12. Other teams behind them need some help. A lot of that help could come with a Colorado loss. People cheer against Colorado every week, so not super surprising that you'd want to cheer against them now, but now you need to cheer against them. It's not just hey, we don't like them because they do this, that, and the other. They're flashy, whatever. We don't like Coach Prime. It is we need them to lose. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Big 12 fans. How you feeling, BYU fans, after that win? I know you're probably still exhausted. Maybe you won't even see this until noon Eastern because you stayed up partying all night last night after the game. But Colorado fans, I know, are thrilled with their win yesterday. Didn't even necessarily play their best and still found a way to win. They gave up the first 3 scores of the game and still came back and won. I think they went on like a 34-7 run. So really impressive from them. But what are your thoughts there? What are you thinking after your team played or was off yesterday? Kansas State still not out of it. They would be probably my 3rd most likely team to make it if Colorado was to drop one. I think Kansas State probably wins out, but they play 2 teams that are really good in Iowa State and Arizona State. So wide open at this point in the Big 12. Not the chaos scenario just yet. If Colorado keeps winning, none of this really matters. But if they drop a game, this thing could be wide open. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Appreciate you guys a ton for tuning in to College Football Addiction.